Hey friends, welcome back. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you, presenting a new episode of this podcast where we discuss these topics just as they are. Thanks to this, we've earned countless haters because there are many people aligned with one group or organization who don't like us telling the truth about their idols. But we also have friends, so here's a shout out to the small town of Vasco Gil, Durango, but that doesn't keep us up at night. We're going to keep working hard to let you know the reality of the Ocran world. Today we'll talk about a topic that's recently been in the news. The collaboration of three big figures, members of the telCar of Sinaloa. I'm talking about Ovidio, Joaquin, and Nestor. Let's see what happens with all this mess and analyze what's been going on in Sinaloa with the collaboration of these young people. As you already know, in recent years, the telCar of Sinaloa has faced a series of blows that have weakened its structure and leadership. However, few events have generated as much astonishment as the recent collaboration of three of its most notorious figures: Ovidio and Joaquin, both leaders of the organization, and Nestor, boss of telCar. In this episode, we'll dive a bit into the reasons behind their collaboration with the authorities, the legal implications they face, and how this act could transform not just the future of the Sinaloa cartel, but also a change or a rearrangement in the landscape of Ocran in Mexico. But don't think that only those three are cooperating with the American government. Sources assure me that Orso Ivan Gastelum, better known as El Cholo Vago, is also one of the high-ranking members of the organization who is now working with the American justice system. The four, considered key figures in telCar operations, were captured in different operations that made international headlines. The downfall of these individuals led to several changes in the structure of the Sinaloa cartel. After their capture and extradition to the United States, except for Joaquin, who turned himself in, they had to choose between two different paths. But it was an easy choice: remain silent and face long sentences, or cooperate with the prosecutor's office in exchange for a possible reduction in their sentences. According to reports, the decision to cooperate was obvious: facing justice in the United States, where the sentences are considerably harsher if you don't cooperate. They were brought to negotiate with the prosecutor's office. Now, this isn't something that surprises us. It's simply part of the endless chain of Ocran. But what is this endless chain of Ocran, you may ask? Well, it's easy to explain. It's a cycle that has no end. The government captures a person, whether a high-ranking member or a low-ranking member. In many cases, they are detained in the United States or in Mexico. When it's in Mexico, they extradite them to the United States, and once there, to reduce their sentence, this individual cooperates by providing information about other members of the organization. Then the authorities go after these new targets, and so the cycle continues. It keeps repeating. Every new detainee tries to cooperate and point out others to gain benefits and get out of prison, and so on. It's a cycle where for each link that falls, another one rises, and even if structures are dismantled, there's always someone else, ready to take that vacant spot. And the game of captures and extraditions turns into an endless chain. It's a system where captures seem more like player substitutions in a football match. Some go out, others come in. We can call this the endless chain of Ocran. Now here, I'm going to show you a little video of the central theme of this episode.
Como les dije, distintas fuentes confirmaron a Milenio que la Oficina de Seguridad Nacional, junto con el Departamento de Justicia de Estados Unidos, buscan un acuerdo con Ovidio y Joaquín Guzmán López, además de Néstor Isidro Pérez, el Nini, esto para que se declaren culpables, colaboren y eviten largos juicios. La información es de Ángel Hernández.
Estados Unidos ya está trabajando con su 3 de 3 con grandes operadores del cártel de Sinaloa, con quienes negocia su rendición e incluso una posible colaboración. Se trata de Ovidio y Joaquín Guzmán López, hijos del Chapo Guzmán, y Néstor Isidro Pérez Salas, ex jefe de seguridad de los Chapitos. Fuentes por separado han confirmado a Milenio que la Oficina de Investigaciones de Seguridad Nacional trabaja con el Departamento de Justicia de Estados Unidos y la defensa de estos tres personajes en un acuerdo para que se declaren culpables de ciertos delitos, eviten ir a juicio y se desestimen algunos cargos para lograr sentencias más favorables. Según las fuentes, Ovidio Guzmán y Néstor Pérez ya redactaron su acuerdo de culpabilidad y están por firmarlo para que su defensa solicite al juez a cargo de sus casos una audiencia para formalizarlo. Según las mismas fuentes,
Como le dije,
All right. Well, you heard it. Here I want to credit my friends Angel Hernandez and Luis Chaparro for this news. But just a reminder that you guys weren't the first to say Ovidio and Nini were cooperating, as the exclusive was here on this podcast, because we said it months ago. So, as colleagues aiming to inform the public, let's support each other and tell the truth. By the way, shout out to both of you. Also, I want to tell the audience that we are working on a podcast with Luis Chaparro and myself. I hope it comes together soon. And with this, the public will finally learn who Ocran Leaks is not. Because you see how those crazy folks are acting, trying to get views by spreading lies, so don't miss that podcast. Well, friends, now I'm going to show you another short video of what President López Obrador says about the cooperation of these individuals.
El gobierno de Estados Unidos, ellos negocian con procesados, quienes están sujetos a investigación o ya están detenidos antes de ser sentenciados, para obtener recursos o información, más información. Son llamados testigos protegidos. Es una práctica que tiene el gobierno de Estados Unidos. Y en este caso, no es extraña, porque incluso el mismo gobierno de Estados Unidos dio a conocer que venían manteniendo relaciones para un acuerdo con Guzmán López. Vamos a esperar a ver qué consiste el acuerdo. Estamos nosotros solicitando información, la Fiscalía está investigando y lo va a seguir haciendo. Y la Fiscalía de México tiene que dar a conocer cómo va esa investigación. Y tenemos confianza en que se haga un buen trabajo y se informe.
¿A usted le parece bien este tipo de acuerdos, esta negociación que hay ya en curso?
Sí, cada país tiene sus procedimientos. Somos soberanos. Y si hay relaciones de complicidad, como ha sucedido entre delincuencia y autoridades, debe de castigarse a los responsables. También todo debe probarse, porque si no, un gobierno extranjero utiliza ese mecanismo para someter chantajear, subordinar a otro gobierno.
Well, there you have it. What does President Andrés Manuel think? And did you hear the jab he took at Governor Rochamoya? That was a direct warning. And well, I'm going to add my 2 cents here. You heard the president say that the facts need to be proven, so I want to clarify a bit. Facts are not only clarified by photos, videos, or documents, but also by the knowledge of witnesses. In the United States judicial system, a witness's statement is considered valid evidence, but its value and credibility depend on several factors. Let me explain how it works. Look, the witness has his testimony and is admissible as evidence in a trial, of course, as long as it complies with certain rules. In fact, the testimony of a single witness can be enough to establish a fact as evidence, as I already told you. But in practice, prosecutors prefer to corroborate this testimony with other evidence, whether physical evidence, documents, and also additional testimonies to strengthen the credibility of said testimony. Usually, multiple testimonies that agree on the same thing are considered circumstantial evidence, meaning that if 3 or more people corroborate the same, that evidence is taken as verified. Let's call it that. First of all, let's review a bit more about how the process of bringing these characters to American justice was, since many people who are watching this podcast for the first time don't know much about the characters. So here, we'll do a brief recap. The first accusation against Ovidio and Joaquin was in the District of Columbia. Here, I'll show the accusation on the screen. Then, Ovidio and Joaquin had another accusation in Illinois, along with their 2 brothers Ivan and Alfredo. There is another accusation also in New York. Here, I'll show you a couple of photos of Ovidio as well, in his glory days in Mexico, and I'm also going to show you one of Joaquin's. Now, Nestor. His first accusation was in the year 2021 in the District of Columbia. Here is the accusation on the screen. And then they hit him with another accusation, now in New York, which I will also show you here. Here it is. And this picture is from when Nini was in Mexico. Ovidio was arrested about 5 years after being charged in the United States. As many of you know, things got really messy in Culiacan and the surrounding areas. He was arrested in January 2023. Here's the picture of his arrest. He was only in prison in Mexico for 8 months and was extradited to the United States, specifically to the city of Chicago, in September of that same year. Here's the picture from the day he was extradited. Sorry. Here he is during the extradition. The previous one I showed you is when it's already processed in the United States. Now, let's talk about Nestor. The Nini was arrested 2 years after being accused in the United States. And as many of you know, nothing was done for him in Culiacan. Nothing. 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 They detained him in November of 2023. Here I show you images of his arrest. He was only detained in Mexico for 6 months and was extradited to the United States to the city of New York. Here, I'll show you the photo from the day he was extradited. And here is the photo of Nestor already in a prison in the United States. Now, Joaquin is a special case because he wasn't arrested. He turned himself in to the United States authorities 6 years after being accused. He's the one they're gonna make a mess over in Sinaloa, but that's another story. Here is the photo of the day he turned himself in to the United States authorities. And here's also the photo from when they processed him in prison. All right, friends, you've seen a bit about how things are with these 3 youngsters. But now let's go back so you can fully understand this series of events and get an idea of how everything unfolded. As we saw, Ratoncito was arrested in January of 2023. All right then, around April or May of 2023, a letter came to light that Pocha sent to his kids. And with it, we're going to fully understand this matter, not just a tiny part of it. Here, I'm going to read the letter to you and explain it so you can understand. The letter goes like this. Hello, my kings. With much pleasure and affection I write this letter, hoping you are well. I'm telling you, I'm very worried about everything that's been on TV here related to the matter and the speech DEA Director Ann Mirgam gave, where she directly called out Los Chapitos. Then the letter continues. My wish is that you can have a peaceful and trouble-free life. I miss you a lot, my kings. It's tough here, but I have faith that you can reach a good agreement. You need to see the lawyer. He has a good relationship with the prosecutors and says he can get a good deal. We must think about the family's future and well-being, but always through the lawyers, so the family doesn't get involved. Okay, so here Pocha is asking them to reach an agreement with the United States Prosecutor's Office. And for that, he's asking them to look at a lawyer since he has good relationships with the prosecutors and assures them that he can get a good deal and emphasizes that everything should always be through lawyers, that even family shouldn't show their face. The letter continues. I don't want you to be like this or continue like this. Try to fix everything. Remember that no one is trustworthy and everyone will try to solve their problems at our expense. Stop that business you have. This refers to the Fanta business. Try to negotiate with the people from Mexico City to buy some time. This is clearly with the federal government. For now, keep a low profile as much as you can. We need to go unnoticed like ghosts. No one should talk about you. Let's wait a few months for things to calm down and make sure there are no scandals. Remember that during these days, corridos were banned and no one could talk about them. Check the list that the ELIC has. These are the ones they want so you can earn points with these friends and make them more compliant. This means the lawyer has a list of targets from the prosecutor's office and tells the Chapitos to start handling or handing them over to get on good terms with the prosecutor's office and make them more receptive or cooperative with them. That the Raton negotiates a good deal first so he accepts the extradition and doesn't fight anymore. And that everything helps the 4 of you. Make sure the Raton negotiates a good deal first so he accepts the extradition and doesn't fight, and that everything helps the 4 brothers. Start organizing everything and be very careful and discreet so no one suspects. I'm very proud of you, my kings. Take care and don't forget I love you. We need to hurry so time doesn't beat us. Well, friends, you heard it. Clearer than water. All the dates match. Obviously, they listened to their dad and negotiated a good deal, so Raton didn't fight the extradition and agreed to be taken with a deal with the prosecutor's office since he was in Mexico. And all the legal protections to prevent his extradition, all of that is a show. It's all, as the letter says, to make sure no one suspects anything, and they believe he was fighting to avoid extradition. You have heard that the United States government said that they had been in talks, discussions, and negotiations for over a year with Joaquin's handover. Well, that means they were already collaborating with the United States government even before Ovidio was extradited, because Ovidio was extradited in September 2023. And if the announcement was made by the United States government in August 2024, and they say they had been in negotiations for over a year, it means that before July 2023, Los Chapitos were already negotiating and collaborating with the United States government. And when this letter came to light, it was in May 2023. Do you realize that all the events are connected and follow a chronological order? Now, let's take a look at a few things they've done, or more commonly and professionally known as the positives they did with the prosecution office. The first pawn the Chapitos sacrificed, meaning they handed him over, was Heriberto, who was caught in a sting operation. I'll show you on the screen when they detained him. And as we just discussed, we have to mention that Raton didn't fight his extradition. That was another nod to the United States. Thirdly, we have this video to show you another of the positives they provided.
Ingratitud, la moneda de cambio de los Chapitos. La captura de Néstor Isidro, el Nini Pérez, no fue casualidad, sino una traición interna en el cártel de Sinaloa, dirigida por los Chapitos. Según informantes de la DEA, la agencia obtuvo información clave sobre su paradero en Nabolato, Sinaloa, gracias a la cooperación de Ovidio Guzmán, quien tras su extradición a Estados Unidos, optó por ser un delator, lo que demuestra cómo estas capturas son facilitadas por los propios líderes criminales. Los Chapitos han establecido un oscuro patrón. La lealtad de sus subalternos se paga con cárcel o muerte. Muestran que la traición es la norma. Numerosos operadores han sido brutalmente sacrificados y sus familias despojadas de los bienes acumulados en su carrera delictiva. Esta dinámica expone la falta de principios de los Chapitos y la complicidad de las autoridades mexicanas, los cuales se benefician de estas traiciones internas, eliminando a quienes saben demasiado sobre los vínculos entre el gobierno y el narcotráfico. Las señales de deslealtad son evidentes. Es solo cuestión de tiempo para que los operadores comiencen a reconsiderar su lealtad a los Chapitos antes de convertirse en las próximas víctimas de su ingratitud.
Well, you've seen it. As we had already said here a long time ago, the Chapitos handed over Nini to score points with the United States government. And to all the cheerleaders who don't accept it, deal with it. And they say, how are they going to hand over their own people and then speak about them afterward? That's illogical. They should have just resigned him. If you don't know, don't comment. We already told you here. Him resigned. It's useless to them, but they agreed to put it in and that during the operation, the government would resign him. This way they can count it as a positive because they hand him over. Whatever the government does, that's another story. They fulfilled their part, regardless of what the Nini says. And what might affect them doesn't compare to the points they gain with the government. And we can't forget the message the Chapitos sent in one of their many letters, where they said they didn't produce any Fanta and weren't leaders of anything, that they never partnered with anyone who worked with Fanta, and then the banners they hung in several states trying to look good with the government. warning that no one should dare work with Fanta, strictly prohibiting it. For what? To do what Pocha's letter said, earn points with the prosecutor's office to get them to be more lenient. Here, I am going to show on the screen the letter from the Chapitos and some images of the blankets they hung up. Another sacrifice by the Chapitos to look good with the government was this young man, Brandon Nazario, who was arrested in May of 2024 in Culiacan. They handed him over in the same way.
Fuerte golpe al cártel del Pacífico, en especial a los Chapitos. Autoridades detuvieron a Brandon Nazario N., alias el Catrín. Este sujeto es el supuesto operador de varios narcolaboratorios en Culiacán, y de acuerdo con las investigaciones, abastecía a las facciones de este cártel. Elementos de la Guardia Nacional, así como del Ejército, realizaron un operativo en conjunto en Los Olivos, al norte de Culiacán. Durante la detención, en la que no se reportó ningún enfrentamiento, autoridades aseguraron 2 armas de fuego, diversos cargadores y cartuchos, así como 1000 pastillas de fentanilo. El Catrín es señalado por la producción de fentanilo, así como el tráfico de estupefacientes hacia Estados Unidos.
There you go, another medal for the Chapitos. But the same thing always happens. The bosses hype people up to make them seem like they were important players and leaders, etc., etc. But the reality is that this Brandon Nazario was nothing like what was said in the video, just a scapegoat hyped up to make the government look good. Another positive for the Zapitos was that thanks to his statements, they were able to extradite Sergio Vega. He had been detained since 2019 without being extradited, but since Ratoncito made his statements about what Sergio did, they were able to get the extradition order. Here on the screen, I'm showing you the image of who I'm talking about, also known as the Latigo, the Suegro, or Don David. One more of the positives for the Chapitos was that Joaquin surrendered to the U.S. government in July of 2024. And lastly, the biggest positive of all was that the Chapitos handed over the Yoma as a gift to the U.S. security agencies in El Paso, Texas. Very well. These are some of the things that the Chapitos have done in their role as collaborators with the U.S. government. And as you saw at the beginning of this episode, it is mentioned that Ovidio, Joaquin, and Nestor are about to sign their plea agreements. But what is a plea agreement? I'm going to tell you so you can understand it perfectly. Well, friends, here ends the first part of this story. Stay tuned for next week to know the second part of the story. Thanks everyone for your support and look forward to more content from your friend Ocran. Greetings.